I cannot tell you how many people have ruined their immigration status by not getting fully divorced before they file Form I-751 to remove the conditions on their residency. Let me explain. So Form I-751 is used to remove the conditions on your residency. Basically, on the day you become a permanent resident through marriage, if your marriage is less than 2 years old, your residency will be conditional, which means on your green card, there will be an expiration date and your card will expire 2 years after your residency was granted. Before your green card expires, within 90 days of it expiring, we need to file Form I-751, petition to remove conditions on your residency. And this form has several different options available. The main two options are you're either still fully married and in a good faith marriage and both spouses are going to sign the form, or you're fully divorced and your US citizen spouse does not need to sign the form. You just sign the form yourself and you include a copy of your divorce certificate and evidence that your marriage was entered into in good faith. Now here's the situation. Let's say two spouses are having marital problems and they're separated. The immigrant spouse knows that he needs to apply to remove his conditions down the road, but he doesn't want to get fully divorced because he thinks that's going to make the immigration process more complicated. So for the year before he files Form I-751, he's separated from his US citizen spouse. And a common fact pattern is the US citizen spouse is like on good terms with him and will agree to sign Form I-751. I'm here to tell you that that's a very dangerous situation to be in. Because for the year before you file Form I-751, you will not have very convincing evidence that you were in a good faith marriage. Sure, you might have some continuing bank accounts with probably less transaction history than when you were actually living together. You might have a joint tax return. You might have a couple other things, but that's not super persuasive evidence that you're in a good faith marriage because you guys aren't sharing your lives together. And now, what's going to happen? You're going to file your I-751 after being separated from your spouse, but not divorced. And you're going to submit some weak evidence from the past 2 years. Maybe the first year, the evidence was good, but over the last year where you guys were separated, it's much weaker. And then the case will remain pending for like 2 years. 2 years later, you'll get a request for evidence asking for more evidence that you've actually been in a good faith marriage. And now, by that point, you've actually been separated for the last 3 years. And now you're struggling. You have like no evidence from the last 3 years. You only have evidence from the first year that you became a conditional resident. And you submit it, USCIS is unhappy, they schedule an interview for you and your spouse to attend, and this is now someone you've been separated from for years, even though you're still legally married. You guys show up to the interview, you cannot answer basic questions about your day-to-day lives together because you're not living together. And that's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, there's a fraud determination because you guys actually lie and claim you're still living together. So this is a nightmare situation and all of it can be avoided with some decent legal advice. The advice that I give people is that if you're separated from your spouse, and you know that the marriage is irreconcilable, you're not going to get back together. You're just trying to wait the immigration process out to become an unconditional resident or citizen, and then down the road you guys will get divorced, but the marriage is effectively over. If the marriage is effectively over, then get a divorce. Because with a final divorce certificate, you can be completely honest with the immigration officer. You can explain that within a year of becoming a conditional resident, the marriage started to go downhill. You guys had major problems, you separated, you tried to work it out, but in the end, it didn't work out. Under those conditions, you can still have your conditions removed. And I have a lot of clients who've had their conditions successfully removed after getting divorced from their US citizen spouse. The key is to prove that the marriage was in good faith when you got married. It's normal for marriages to have ups and downs. If your marriage didn't work out and you guys got separated and then divorced and you apply to remove your conditions, that's not fraudulent. That's you being completely honest about everything that happened, and that's what a good faith marriage looks like, unfortunately, sometimes. What is fraudulent is if you lie to the immigration officer about being in a good faith marriage when you guys are actually separated, know you're going to divorce, and haven't been sharing your lives together. And that's something that I want to strongly discourage, because you're taking a winnable case and you're throwing a lot of risk and uncertainty into it, and you can end up in a terrible situation where you can even end up getting removed or deported from the United States under those circumstances. I want to end by saying I understand how stressful this process can be. You became a permanent resident, a conditional permanent resident through your spouse, and now in addition to your marriage falling apart, you're uncertain whether your future in the United States can continue legally. I understand how stressful that can be. And let me just say that as long as you plan, it can be saved. Your immigration status might be salvageable, and in fact, if you plan appropriately and you have enough evidence that your marriage was entered into in good faith and you never lied to an immigration officer or misrepresent anything, I would go so far as to say there's a really high probability that you'll be able to meet your burden and have the conditions on your residency removed so you can continue your life in the United States and eventually become a US citizen. If you need any assistance, or this is a situation that you're going through, feel free to reach out, schedule a consultation. We can create a plan, work on your case, create a strategy, and I'll try to help you to the maximum extent that I can. If you guys are new to my channel and you're interested in these topics, I focus on marriage-based immigration and naturalization. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time for another one.